Illinois, and the first 100% solar power business in Freeport, as well as in Stephenson County. So I can't wait to have Pastor Hank share the story of this wonderful project. Pastor Hank Fairman.
Good evening, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to have you here. Normally, I'd be saying this in our fellowship hall because it's truly a pleasure to have the Audubon Society meeting at our church. So thank you for being in our building. Thank you for being one of our community partners that keeps us so active. Our goal as a congregation is to use everything that God has given us, the space that we've got, the land that we've got, and the energy that we've got to really be the church that Freeport needs us to be. So thank you for being who you are and being a partner with us in that. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about us going solar and how that all started up, give you some information on what we've learned in the process, and see what kind of questions you've got at the end about what all this is about. I will say I speak in God language, so if you are not a God-fearing person or you use a different word, I apologize. Please translate as you can, and please assume goodwill on my part. Our mission and our vision all comes out of our faith, so everything that we do is driven by our belief. Okay, can I have permission to share the screen? Oh, good, I can. Okay, let me hit the right buttons here. There we go. Yep, you can see the big picture screen, not the little screen.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
I arrived at St. John about 4 years ago, September the 1st. And it was a good time to arrive because the congregation had an excellent interim ministry under Reverend Neri Karjian to really get things ready to make moves to see where God was taking us in the very near term. One of the first meetings I had was with our green team, our creation justice ministry. And they said, well, we've done some stuff. The normal stuff. We've pushed recycling. We're doing ink cartridges. We're doing newspaper whenever that was popular. But we're kind of stuck on where we can go. They just taken on a mission. Was their second generation of low E light bulbs. And I'm sure you've noticed in fellowship hall and around the building now, we went from CFLs to LEDs. And basically doubled the lumen push for less than half of the energy usage. Is actually pretty impressive. But this group was kind of stuck on that idea of getting the light bulbs done, but we couldn't get the power bill any lower. I mean, once you go from 60 watts to 15 watts down to 7, there's a threshold there. So how can we be good partners in creation justice and creation care when we finally hit that bottom line threshold of we can't do any better, we can't do any more? So they started just asking questions. And on my arrival, the folks who were very active in that group, Hugh Knapp, Tom Campbell Oldcult, Dan Krieger, Carol Ahrens, and a few others said, let's see where else we can go. Now, we've always been big on this creation justice concept. One of the first and foremost pieces is we wanted to make a visible, positive witness to our beliefs wherever we go in the community. Where St. John is, you'll know that we care for our neighbors, we care for the earth, we care for the children. We want everyone to feel welcomed to the most extravagant level of welcome that we can offer. But we're also big on living that faith out loud. We don't want to do it. We want to let folks know how important it is to be that creation care place, that environmental justice place in all the ways that we live. We also want to be a resource in our community so others can see how it can be done. Like any good evangelistic church, it's not just enough to believe what you believe. You got to tell others why it's a good way to be. Now, our way of evangelism is not so in your face. As other faith traditions, we are very much a do it by example and see how we live it. And the big part of that is our extravagant welcome to make others feel that they can be welcomed into this. And they can say, oh, well, I don't really understand it all, but I feel comfortable and welcome, and I want to make a change too. So our creation justice ministry is goaled at those same things. We want to make sure that we are making that positive impact, that we're changing our Freeport community, our Stephenson County community, that we're showing ways that other folks can be involved, and that there is always a way that folks can be welcomed. Part of that, though, is that key piece of social justice and environmental justice, down to the paper that we use in the copier, the light bulbs that we use to light the building. These are just part of who we are and what we do. When I was formally installed as pastor in the end of February 2017, the congregation said, "What gift should we, what should we do to celebrate that time?" And I'd been there now through the darkness of winter and said, the one thing I would love for us to do is look at the sanctuary lights, because it's dim in the pulpit. It's hard to read the paper. And I'm sure it's hard to read the hymnals too. So what can we do? This is what really started really kicking us in the light bulbs into the next level, beyond the hallways and beyond the classrooms with low E tubes and CFLs into the full LED. We relit the sanctuary from big old 600 watt mogul based bulbs. Can you imagine what that looks like? It's like a softball with a stick shoved in it, just huge things, just energy draw. And then each of those was replaced with a 51 watt, 3 element LED. Now I will say, before I wax poetic about this, there's a downside. Those light bulbs, in order for those light bulbs to work right, there's a little cooling fan in them. So when you flip the lights on, all you hear is shh underneath everything. It's really eerie when you're walking around the building and all you can hear is that shh noise. If you've ever been on the backside of a pipe organ, it's that same kind of that hush noise that comes out of the pipe organ chamber. But once you get used to the hum, you look around and say, we went from virtually a yellow light, an almost unseeable light, to a light that is so bright that folks said, wow, how did we sing out of the hymnals before? Everything that we do in environmental justice has a practical impact too, beyond our carbon footprint and beyond our electric savings. There's actually, what I found is everything that we've done, and things that we've done around my own home too, it helps us have a more comfortable living as well. Early in the environmental justice cause, it was always, we got to suffer a little bit for the earth. Well, as we've been working into this, I think we've realized that comfort is part of it too. So we've made a positive steps there. So our worship space is brighter. People are more welcome there. It is a generally more welcoming room. Folks who have vision issues can see better in the space. So we've found other ways to make people more welcome. As I said, we hit a wall though, because there's only so many light bulbs to change and there's only so much wattage you can drop and before you get to a point that says there's nothing more to do. Our HVAC plant is as efficient as it can be given its age, and when we replace it, we'll fix that too. We found though that we were using, if I remember right, it was our baseline energy use was 540 kilowatt hours per day was our base burn. And after doing a study with ComEd and with NICOR to look at our efficiencies, they said, you're about as good as you're going to get unless you do something really radical. That's just how much all of the wattage of the computers and all the wattage of the HVAC and all the wattage of the refrigerators and everything else all added up comes to be. On top of this, we house the career tech programs, computer science, CIS program, computer information systems, the Hoya, the health occupation youth apprenticeship, the business classes, and formerly the culinary, which we'd love to get back because it was nice to have mock kitchen and they'd feed you like really well in the mornings. It was kind of nice. So with those partnered, with Career Tech's partnership, we also wanted to make sure with their needs that we were doing something that advanced their goals of being forefront in education and teaching these kids a better way to engage life. So with all these different pieces, we said, what else can we do? Now it's been a while since Highland College had its its windmill up. And many of our folks said, oh, you know what we should do? We should put a windmill in the church parking lot. We've got that line of pine trees. They're all kind of aging out. They're starting to die. We should replace them all with a wind farm. And so that's great. Let's investigate that. And we looked into that. We called up the producers and they came out and said, well, we have a bore, what is it? A 4 foot by 4 foot hole in the ground that needs to go down 35 feet, and nothing can be below that because we're going to fill that with concrete just so the thing doesn't fall over in your parking lot. And have you talked to the city about zoning on that one? Because they might have something against big windmills in the city limits between Carl Sandburg School on one side, Parkview Home on the other side. it might not be what they want in the city. Plus, do you know what the life expectancy of these things are? It's not all that great. So we got the idea very quickly that the wind farm guys didn't want to work with us. So, okay, well, if wind isn't the way to go, what's left for us? And one of the guys said, one of the people had gone out to the home fair, the home show fair out at Highland, and said, well, I just sat on this seminar about solar. What if we investigate that? So I said, okay, what does it practically mean? What does going solar mean? Those of us who are children of the 70s, we remember all the little Radio Shack kits where you tried to get something to light and it just wouldn't do it. You couldn't get the little engine to go anywhere. Even with the strongest flashlight pointed down on it, it wasn't going to happen. Well, so it's changed from 5 years, last 10 years, from what was way back in the 70s and since. It's become such an industry that I'm sure you've seen the signs up all over town, starting beginning of last year, beginning of 2019, with the changes in the state approach to renewable energies. I can't remember what the percentages is, but it was a 25-year plan to produce more than 52% of all power through renewable sources, being wind and solar based. We haven't really done a lot with hydro here because the water really that we've got flowing around really doesn't push enough to do hydro. But they also, we found out that the rebates and the kickbacks and the programs for this made a tremendous stewardship difference as well. So we said, okay, well, what is the true impact of going solar and what can we really do? This is the view of the building that most people don't see. Mostly because unless you're up in a dirigible or something over the top of the property, you don't know what's on our roof. The front view is what you normally see. You will see here, let me see if I can, where's my marker? Swap displays, do I do it over here? There, oops, go back there, here we go. You'll see here we've got basically, 3 different areas of the building. 1, we've got the big fellowship hall roof over here. 2, we've got the sanctuary diamond over here. Then we've got the north wing over here. This kind of big square up there. Each of these are great big flat spaces. And I've been up there to help make sure that the drains are clear. It's a lot of space and it gets rather hot in the day. We said, well, what is our potential evaluation here for solar? Having 2 companies come out and look at us, they said, well, you got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that your roof is, well, pretty shot. So anything that you're going to do is going to necessitate repairing the roof too. Being good stewards of the gifts that we've received from past generations of the church, this was already on our list and we had prices on it. We knew what it was going to cost to do first the fellowship hall roof and the north section roof beyond that. Happily, the shingled roof on the sanctuary was done only about 10 years ago. So it's got a good 20 years of life still left in it. Said, okay, what is the potential here? What do we need? Again, that 540 kilowatts was our magic number. And what we were told was, okay, what you need is a system that produces about 64 kilowatt hours at a peak. Now that'll be important to remember later. 68 kilowatts to do the 540 kilowatt hours. After consulting with 3 different companies, we consulted with 5 different companies. 3 of them said, well, the projects were either too big or they didn't want to work with churches because they just didn't. They wanted to stay more residential or do big businesses that really didn't have a lot of folks saying, couldn't we do that a little cheaper? Or, this is a church. We're always good at saying that when it comes to big projects. I'm sure your church is as well, your faith community. We settled into a company that was based out of Rockford. I'll give them the plug, not for go use them, but that's who we used. If you want the references, they've got plenty of them. Iconic Energy Solutions. I think their little display is actually still up in our narthex in the church because they did do an excellent job for the install. They analyzed our needs. They analyzed the space. They came with their best bids and technologies, and they were not the top. They weren't the cheapest bid. They weren't the most expensive bid, but they came through with what we thought was the right solution. And that was a system that, if I can clear my pen marks, erase pens, was a system that encompassed 2 parts of the building. first and foremost, our goal was to encompass the whole solar system here on the flat roof. We thought Fellowship Hall was certainly going to be big enough to do that. It's a big flat surface. It's a good area. It only has one problem. This angle right here is 27.5 degrees off of 180 degree azimuth, which means it doesn't see the sun enough to produce the power. So I said, okay, fine. God has given us the gift of a big building. What are our other options? Well, you can come over here to this section of the roof, this big center section that we call our south wing, the north wing being the top portion over a little bit higher. Well, that's fine, but that whole roof needs to go, and that's about $200,000 because it's one seam from the sanctuary portion all the way to the north, one big whole thing. Well, $200,000 is a little rich for our blood. So they said, well, there's that one other piece that you have. That one other wonderful resource is the great angle that we have on our sanctuary roof. 130-ish feet by 65 feet by 115 feet. It's a nice big surface. It faces due south, and wow, you'll be impressed by what kind of power you can produce. And we think that if we put the panels like, start with the diamond roof and then come over to the flat roof to fill out the rest, the system will work just fine. Now, we are good stewards of our building, and we're also good stewards of the aesthetic of our building. So we had to sit down and think about this one. Our campus was constructed in the late 60s. The designer of the building was a student of Frank Lloyd Wright. It is a prairie-style building that is all open glass and beautiful. What is it going to look like if we take that prairie-style building and slap solar panels up on the roof? And yes, we had lots of pulling of hair and gnashing of teeth on that one. And I honestly think we lost 2 supporters of the project when they thought when they found out that this was going to be the suggestion, because they thought it's just not the way that the church should look. But remember that our goal is always to be a church that teaches our beliefs out loud. And what better way to show our beliefs and our commitment to being an eco-justice church than to put those panels in a way that everybody coming up from Crape Park can't help but see it. You can't help but ask that question, what's going on that roof? So that core bit of our faith, that we felt called to do something better for our environment so that we could witness our faith out loud to our community. That's what drove our decision to actually go for it and to put the panels in that very visible south face. That when you get that picture of St. John Church, what you see is the bell tower and the solar project. Now, when we get done with the locations, we get done with the theology about what we're doing, everybody asks the big question. And what's the big question? What's it cost? Because this is no little project. If you've done the analysis at your own homes, my house, we put in about $100-ish a month in the high seasons for power. And I've looked at what it takes to do our house here. One, it would take a new roof and probably substructure work, so it's a little prohibitive. Our house is 1917, and I'll tell you, when the wind blows just right, you know it very well that it's 1917 built. We sat down and did the analysis of what the solar project was going to cost and what the roof per project was going to cost to support it. So that south part of the roof, Fellowship Hall up to the sanctuary, including the narthex, costs about $67,500 to repair. It's a simple overlay of a rubber membrane and all the necessary pieces to make that all work right so it's weather tight again. We'd known about this for a while. They'd been tarring the holes for a couple years. It had been out of warranty for about 15, which for a church ain't that bad. Normally you only really do roof repair in a church when somebody puts their foot through it and you have to do something about it. So we found out that, $67,500, Freeport Industrial said, yeah, that's what it's going to cost, and we'll do it at that. After our analysis with our different companies, Iconic Energy Systems came through with a bid for $131,000 for the solar system, for a total cost of $200,000, roughly. Now, we did have an initial bid that was for just the flat roof. Mounting it on the shingled roof actually increased the price by about $20,000. But we said, this is where it's going to be. This is where we're going to get our best power development from, and it's going to be more of what we want. Now the cost of the whole thing, we looked at what would work and what wouldn't work, and this was the best solution based on all the different pieces. But as I said, there was some questions about it. The biggest was, is this the right project to put into a church? I mean, we could, for $200,000, we could do a lot of stuff. We could build a new wing and start a new ministry program. We could open up a 501c3 downtown and feed the hungry, clothe the naked, welcome the prison, visit the prisoners, and all that, all the other things that we're called to do from the Gospels. But part of what we, again, going back to what we do is we live our faith out loud, and what can we do to actually show that our building lives that faith too? So at a meeting in January, at our annual meeting in 2019, is that right timeline? 2019 in January, we asked the congregation, is this what you want to do? And after a round of questions, they empowered a group of people to go and finalize the bids, to finalize the project, and to tell the council that they could go get a mortgage on the place in order to fund the project. Now, it's always scary for churches to take on mortgages because we trust in God, we have great faith, but we also know that the stock market doesn't always perform the way we want it to, and that means our giving, welcome to COVID in 2020, isn't quite where you expected it to be when you started out the year in January. But we were realistic, because as we worked through the project, we found out that there was a lot of things out there to drive that cost down. The first of which is the solar renewable energy credits, the SRECs. ComEd in the state of Illinois were pushing this renewable energy systems to such a degree that they wanted to help make it happen. The SRECs are a per kilowatt prepayment on the total energy production of the solar array over a 20-year period. Now they've got a set formula to say how big is your system, how much do you expect to produce, what's the average during a month and a week or whatever. So they give you that back, and they give it to you in interesting ways. First off, they give you 20% each over 5 years. So you get this payback that should be 20 years long in a very short term. So that $200,000 cost immediately went down $80,000. Secondarily, ComEd, in their part of the game, wants to get that power not into our production and stored up in batteries in our basement, but out into the grid. We love this idea because not only were we going to be producing power for our own usage, but all the overage power goes out to help Carl Sandburg School and Parkview and your house and my house and the rest of the city of Freeport. It's our tithe back to the community for this project. So right there, we got, $96,000 taken care of. Now, over 4 years or so, which was what we figured out the payback would be to make this all happen, we said we spend about $10,000 a year just on electricity. And it's true, whether we reduced our light bulbs or not, the rate went up when when we put the low E bulbs in every time it happened. So our power bill has stayed about the same. Somewhere around $800 to $1,000-ish a month, given the heating and cooling seasons. So we said, fine, over 4 years, we're going to spend $40,000, and that we'll put that in the kitty too, because we know we're going to spend that money. That's our stewardship. We know it's going to be there. So we knew in our pocket, or we assumed in our pocket, was about $140,000 of the project. This made it a little more palatable. But we also knew that in order to make it all happen, we were going to have to take out that mortgage, and we're going to have a little bit of interest. We did some basic assumptions using those online mortgage calculators, and we figured out for a 5-year note at 5%, which was about what average was at the time, on a $200,000 note, it's about $21,000 of interest. But the plan, as it says there, was to pay that loan off as early as possible, to just kill that interest, take that principal down, and be good stewards of it. As I said, that M word is scary, though, because that means we're stuck with at least a 60-month term to pay the system off. But that's what we're getting the SRECs for, is that same 5-year term, that same idea. We came back to the congregation in June, right at the beginning of the month, and said, we think we got a plan. Our green team got up and presented and showed the financial analysis and what this is all going to be. And with the congregation's blessing, we started looking for the financing to make it all happen. I was very surprised, I will say that, at how quickly and how decisively the congregation acted. Now, this wasn't even in our dreams, right? 4 years ago. This wasn't in our dreams really before, oh, I don't know, the end of 2018. But in less than 6-7 months, we came up with an idea. We brought it before the people. One of our grumpy people, who is a local carpenter, was just completely against this project. He was our minority report on the planning team, because we said we got to get him there because he's the one who's going to help us find the holes in this plan. In the end of it, he stood up before the congregation and said, I hated this idea. This was the dumbest thing we could throw money at. It's like a boat with a hole in the bottom of it. But they're going to give us $100,000 to do the project, and we would be idiots if we didn't take the government's money on this one. I thought, okay, is this really going to be the great sales pitch? He's not talking about that evangelical fervor. He's not talking about how God is calling us. He's just saying, if they're going to give us the money, we'd be stupid not to do it. But after about another 2 minutes of debate on which bank to ask for the loan, they said, yes, go for it and make it happen. So we did just that. We went out with the idea of raising $85,000 to $105,000. We planned a contingency in there, and we bid it with a no electric bill stretch goal as $145,000. So we needed $105 to make it work. We knew that. But that $40,000, that $10,000 a year, we wanted to free up specifically so we could expand our mission and outreach ministries. As we could lower the cost of functioning as a building, as a physical structure on the church campus, we could then increase our mission work to the community and to the world by a really interesting dollar sign. Now, this all went down on Pentecost Sunday. If you're a church-going person, the Spirit is what's leading us here. The goal is to really make sure that we don't put that money back into the building, but to take it outside and be that Pentecost church, to let that fire fly, to let this witness shine. So we sat on this, though. We said yes in June. We had some more footwork to do. We had to go get the loan. We had to get everything set up. We had to do all that normal giving campaign kind of stuff and think about our quiet campaign and on who might have the ability to give from their generosity and who might give from their poverty and how we can make that all happen. So we sat down on it and said, how's this all really going to work? We know what the project's going to cost. We know what the interest is going to be. We know how many credits we're going to be. We know how much we need to get together in the fundraising. So we set on the idea of buying the sun in July. This is really our fiscal responsibility for the whole project. As we sat there around the table thinking about, okay, who do we ask and how do we ask and what's the right way to do this and how does this all work? We were sitting in the library at the church. Now, have you ever had a meeting in the library? Raise your hand. The library is in that center part of the building, that south wing that we call it. There is no airflow in that room to save your life. This was a July day in the middle of Illinois, and I swear it was 87 degrees in the room and had to be 100 degrees outside. And everybody's like, can we get this meeting over because I want to go home and back to my air conditioning? But that same solar radiation that superheated the building is exactly what we wanted to capture. And wanted to capture that spirit too. We brought the company in who was doing the installation and said, show us what we can expect. And they said, here is mathematically, with everything positioned just right, what you can expect to produce over the course of the year in solar power. Right now, we're in November. And November means we're a little lower on the scale. So right here, between the two parts of the project, we expect to produce somewhere around 30,000 kilowatt hours over the course of the month. December, a little less. Come to January, about the same. But when we get up to those June, July, and August days, you got May, June, July, you got some kicking sun coming in the building, right? Those months will build up a bank that ends up paying the power bill down as we move into the future. So right now we see a power bill, but over the course of the year, we'll build up that bank and it resets every April so that it just makes a lot of sense stewardship-wise. So how do we package that and tell folks about it? I'm sure you saw laying around the building those little half-fold pamphlets that we had about the solar project. It talked about all this. We now have some practical data, though, on seeing what it actually looks like. And it looks like this. This was our actual bill for August. you'll see that that magic amount of 32,038 actual kilowatt hours came off of our meter reading, and it cost us about $500. Now, I will say having everything shut down for COVID has actually saved us some good money too. We're about 2/3 of our normal power bill. Normally that would be much more of a $600 to $800 power bill. 1 month later, as the sun started setting, we got our first bill that actually recorded the kilowatt generation. You'll see 3 more lines added to the grid there. But, and again, we're looking at those same 2 numbers as we saw the month before, 3,264, which was different from 3,236. 3,264 actual cost us $138, not the $486 of the prior month. And why is that the case? Because right there you get our actual kilowatt to grid. At that same time, we produced almost identically the amount that we needed to offset the building usage. Now, with the summer credits for the winter months, that means that we will be the first self-generated house of worship in the state of Illinois. There are other faith communities that have gone partial solar, that have gone, they've bought solar credits, but no one, to my knowledge, has actually gotten to that point to say that they can zero out their electric bill because of the gift that God gives us in the sun and the gift that God gives us in the technologies that can convert that energy to our use. In the end, we'll have a power bill every month that's about $50 because you can't escape the ComEd fee. That hookup fee, the taxes and all that, we still got to pay that. But as we give to Caesar, we give to Caesar. We rejoice in what God has given us in the solar project. When I saw this bill come in, I thought there had to be something wrong. 500 to 800, that's our range. It's $10,000 a year, right? No, it's $138 because we just missed that generation point. Kilowatt to grid, kilowatt from grid. I'm impressed by the project. What does 65 kilowatts mean? 1,000 tons of coal eliminated from combustion. 94,146 gallons of gasoline not being used. You want to look at the more positive green side, it means we just planted a forest of 21,500 trees. Perfect for birds to sit in for the habitat of all of our native animals around. We've saved that much carbon just by making a silly decision to say, why not? This is the view of our church now. This was coming off of the project just before the spring green started coming up. The project went officially live in March. It took another 5 months for final clearinghouse stuff, and the city had to sign off on it, and then ComEd had to sign off on it, and then somebody else had to sign off on it. So it took us till September to get it going. But I can pull up right now on my phone and tell you how much we produced for between the 3 different grids. The shingle roof has two separate systems that kind of match their curves every day, and the flat roof picks up in the afternoon and carries us into the evening to finish out our load. But it's been impressive to see. We've learned much about who we are as a congregation and where our commitment to being that green church is. And they're already asking the question, what's next? Again, there's some folks that are eyeing that south wing and north wing roof saying, can't we put another set of panels up there? What if we were producing more for Freeport to be that church that Freeport needs us to be, and to be helping to lower the carbon impact of our city? Now, I know City Hall's had some great initiatives out there. That a lot of that stalled as we moved into COVID times. But I think there's still room out there for churches like ours, like yours, homes like mine and like yours, to take that step forward and see, what else can we do? How else can we be good stewards of the land, good habitats for nature, and more responsible in how we're consuming? Everything we've got right now plugs in. From the computer modem that's sending all of us into our Zoom meetings, to our cell phones that are ringing next to us, to the microphones that we're talking through. How can we be better stewards using all of this technology to reduce our carbon footprint and to make the world a better place? You can hear in my voice. I'm proud of the congregation. This was a big jump, especially for a pastor to come in within the third year and say, "Hey, folks, I need $200,000. What do you think?" I'm proud how they responded, because they responded with a true generous spirit and owning this project for their own. I was a cheerleader for it. I didn't have to plan it. We had folks who were so just invested in seeing this thing through. I give them thanks, and I give thanks to God for their vision on this one. To be that church that they feel Freeport needs, to share that witness, to say, you too can do this too. Come ask us. We'll show you how. Well, I think that's it. I think that's my last slide, because I don't want to go black there. It is. What kind of questions? What do you think? I'll shut the share off for right now so we can see everybody in big picture.
What do you think the life of the solar system will be?
The panels are guaranteed for 20 years for less than, it's like whatever their generation capacity is, they can't lose less than 1.5%. Okay. If that happens, the warranty replaces the panel.
And if they're going to be damaged by hail?
Their hail rating and snow load ratings exceed that of our cars.
Wow, that's impressive.
We had a panel sitting out in the narthex. I don't know if you saw it there. We've actually took it and with the permission of the installer, bent it, and you can put a bend on that of about, I don't know, 20 degrees of flexion. It's good. They're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
He said again, if the shingles will damage first before the panels will from hail.
Wow, that's wonderful. Because I must admit, I've seen a lot of solar around, and because I'm an insurance adjuster, my first thought is, what happens when hail hits that?
Well, our second call after we figured out the financing was to call our insurance company and said, here's the size of the project. Here's what we're paying for it. What's that going to do to our premium? And they kind of laughed at us. It was $200 a year.
Oh, okay. All right.
This is $140,000 projects, $200 a year to back end insure it against weather damage.
Yeah.
And that included wind, because of course, if you're shearing these guys sit about 3.5, 4 inches up off the roof. You get a wind shear under there, it could rip the whole thing with the shingles off. It includes the wind shear and the hail damage.
Fantastic.
So as being, again, good stewards, the insurance company said it's worth the risk. Go for it.
Nice. Maybe no more questions. So before people go away, I just want to say that I think it's really wonderful that you did this. I think it's really great for a lot of people, not just for the church itself, which is wonderful.
That's our hope. We hope to inspire folks.
Yeah, thank you very much. From ground one, every aspect of the project is really remarkable. The people, the project itself, and what the project gives the community. It's really, really amazing.
Yeah.
I have a comment or a question.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever thought about a green roof on your flat roofs?
Oh,
you can grow produce on there.
We did, but we have a problem. They center drain, so there's no way to get water back up. So to do green roof or even put rain barrels up there, we'd have to create a secondary roof to catch the water. It was actually one of the green team's ideas was, we got this great flat roof, let's do it. And then we got the engineering in and said, the whole roof slopes to primary drain holes. You can't catch the rainwater. You're going to have to literally pump water back up onto the roof to make it a green roof. However, we do have our carbon sequestration gardens out on the far end of the north wing that we grow produce for FACC and for community food pantries. So we did take that idea and do the raised bed gardens back there. We're hoping again to expand that this year to, I think they're doing 8 beds now.
Now, what is you talking about?
That's our carbon sequestration vegetable garden. We do peppers and squashes and all this kind of stuff on the far north end of the building. It kind of hides back over by EB Street.
What does carbon sequestration mean?
Well, we know that we use so much carbon with our cars and with our electric production and all of that. So we figured out that each bed it reduces the carbon footprint by, I'm going to mess this one up. It's some factor of 10. It's either 10, I think it's 100 pounds of coal burned every year is not used when we put these beds in because they keep they take in the CO2 gas. They eliminate carbon by our growing plants there.
Oh, okay.
So it's a cute name for saying our raised bed vegetable gardens, but there's a mathematical factor in there about how each raised bed actually reduces our carbon footprint and within our congregation and within our community.
Interesting.
I'd have to go back and find the newsletters there to talk about what that is.
All the more reason to garden.
Exactly it. Carrig, I see your note. We did look at backup batteries. Specifically, I wanted Tesla tiles and a Tesla power plant in my church. But everybody who does solar says you get no benefit on it. The batteries still only last you between 5 and 7 years, and then you've got to replace them, and it's cost prohibitive. You do better to get the little APS backups for your computers to make sure that you don't have data loss and put the power back into the grid. You'll actually you'll be producing more and impacting the community more by dumping your excess production into the grid.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was the cost factor of going, okay, you can do it, but it's going to cost you $20,000 and you're going to have to come up with that again in 7 years. Really? Or we could just kind of work it this way.
Yeah, if you're thinking of all of these future factors, I think that's really important, and it's impressive to see all of the different cost benefit analyses that were done to get this project going.
Our congregation has been around for 173 years.
Wow.
They are old, appropriately fiscally conservative German stock. When the founders of the congregation came here, they were treated somewhat as outcasts because they weren't the right kind of Germans to show up, and they kind of all came at once, and like a whole village moved over. If you've ever read that Stephenson County 1970 book, and who was real Freeport and those interlopers that is coming in and making Freeport over again, that was us. We were the Lippe Detmold Germans who pissed everybody off. They had a mark, though, of saying, we want to come in and be part of this community, and we want to make that positive change. We want to be present to what the community needs. But we need to do it with good, old-fashioned planning, and we got to look at the long haul, because we want our church to be here in 20 years and 40 years. I don't really think they thought about 170 years when they built the building the first time. For those of you who know the geography, we used to be on the corner of Chicago and Galena, where the gas station is.
Okay.
Up into the mid 50s, and then a boiler explosion took the building apart. On December 20th, actually, we're coming up on the anniversary day. We always read the poem that the senior pastor's spouse wrote in looking at the building as it smoldered there. But they were committed to making sure that this was a long-term commitment. Their move out to Park Boulevard was, again, a long-term commitment. And everything they really decide on, what's our end impact here? What's it going to cost us in the long run? What's responsible for us? Because what we take on, we're giving to another generation. So we can't just indebt them with all of this.
Yeah.
Now, I will say one thing I rejoice in, going back to those numbers on the project, that $105,000. We started our quiet campaign in August, going around and asking what we were looking for. I think it was 10 people to approach a $10,000 gift. Better than 5,000, 10 if we could do it. We oversubscribed the quiet campaign and started the project with $65,000 in the bank.
Wow.
And I'm not talking pledged. I'm talking people cut checks and put it in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Our end total, I believe, is $174,000 in subscriptions and cash in hand over a 3-year period to make this happen. We've already paid off at the end of December. We will have paid off $100,000 of the note. Our 5-year note should be gone by the end of next year.
Always like that.
All
How quick.
of that production, everything that we had put in, that $40,000 that we'd be spending from the power bill, that's all right there for mission.
Fantastic.
Because these folks think about it and they make a plan and they stick to that plan and they think to the future. I also think that the idea of having the mortgage scared the bejesus out of them. So we're taking care of that as quick as we could. But a generous spirit and a forethinking spirit, I think, is really what guides us.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Well, Pastor Hank?
Yes.
Yeah, Dave Deeney here.
There
Very
you are.
good program. Thank you very much. I've been a member of the Audubon here for a few years. I actually came from the suburbs of Chicago. We retired out here. But in my previous life, before I retired, I was a research engineer and did quite a bit of research on photovoltaics. I was the developer of the requirements for the photovoltaic arc fault circuit interrupter. I also led a major project about 8 or 10 years ago for the Department of Homeland Security, where we developed all of the training materials for the U.S. Fire Service for buildings that had photovoltaics on the roof. It's a whole separate, you might say, challenge for them. I live in the Lake Somerset area. I actually volunteer as the building inspector here. I've been putting on training programs for the local fire people out here. We've got maybe about 6 or 8 homes out here now with photovoltaics on it, primarily with the fire service in the Davis, Rock City, and the Dakota area. The question is, I work quite a bit with Stephenson County. I know, and I believe Freeport has their own, inspection services. But were the fire service involved at all with? You're probably the largest, I would imagine, photovoltaic, installation there in the Freeport area on the proper methods for being able to put out a PV fire there.
Yes, in one word, yes. Because of, and I pulled the image up here of the building, because of the access here to this part of the roof,
That's right, yeah.
and to this part of the roof, we actually had the fire inspector out, the building inspector out, and I can't even think who it was. I think it might have been the fire chief. Everybody's staring at this roof going, well, if we go by the 2012 standards, it means this much offset. If we go by the 2016 standards, it means this much offset. If we go by the latter standards, which no one's passed yet, we got to go by this standard. So we literally were out there with a couple of 2x4s with some guy up on the roof, setting them out there to see what the right exposure was. I give them great respect. They put us through the ringers, trying to make sure the right decisions were happening. Oops, that was the wrong button.
One thing you got to do, and one of the first things they do, God forbid there won't be a fire here, but things happen, is that first of all, the fire service has to get access to the roof.
Exactly.
Water and electricity don't mix. We know that, and like in a normal building, the first thing the fire service does is turn the power off. But if a fire occurs during the day, you just can't turn the power off on a photovoltaic system.
That's
and
right.
they
Right
also
here,
yeah,
you'll see that's our inverters and the main power drain. There are literally 3 breakers before you actually get to the electric system. But as you say, those panels are live.
they're live. Yeah. They
They
can do things like, they keep producing. There are some newer systems now where they have what they call microinverters, where they can actually have what they call rapid shutdown and things like that. Iconic, I know, is installing some of those nowadays, I believe. But yeah, there's the other thing the fire service needs to do when there's a fire is to start putting holes in the roof to create what they call ventilation. And one thing they don't want to do is start cutting through the roof and cutting into some of these live wires and causing electrical shock hazards. So good to know. I've been trying to do the best I can since I'm out here now and retired, have time on my hands to do some training with the local fire service on how to best put out fires with photovoltaics. So it's I wasn't too sure. I know I work in where I live here at Lake Somerset. We have half of our area is Winnebago County, other half Stephenson. There is quite a bit of electrical inspection and the Winnebago side, but Stephenson unfortunately a little bit weak in that regard. But I don't know much about the city of Freeport itself, but I've got the feeling they've probably got a pretty good handle on this.
What we've understood from Iconic was that they've never had such questions asked of them at any other installation point as they got asked in the city of Freeport.
Okay, great.
We are definitely the largest non-municipal installation to date. The water sewer is a big plant, and Highland I think actually exceeds us. I think they're about 100,000 kilowatt hours,
Okay,
but they're
yeah.
ground based.
Yeah,
So disconnect is a
ground.
lot easier when you're ground based. Just flip the breaker and walk on. Here you've actually got to get up there.
I had a number of installations on the roof of our facility there where I worked. We had about 1 million square feet of buildings, so I had quite a bit of room to work with to do my research up there. But one of the most promising things I tell people about photovoltaics is that those panels are about 20% efficient. In other words, the sun puts out on a good day about 1,000 watts per square meter of radiated energy, and the panels will convert about 20% of that sun power into electrical energy. Theoretically, photovoltaics can put out something at around, I believe it's about 60 to 70% efficiency. So I think much like if you look at your cell phone from 20 or 30 years ago and look at it today, how much different it is, I really think in 20 or 30 years from now, when you may be on the second or third generation of photovoltaic panels on your roof, they will probably be 2 or 3 times as efficient as they are today, producing 2 or 3 times as much power as they are. And that's the real promise of this technology.
Interesting.
Christine, I saw your hand up.
Yes, Hank, Pastor Hank, thank you for the program. Question about snow. Does it just melt away?
Pretty much. It can take I believe it's rated to an 8-inch full density snow load, which is actually more than our roof is rated to, and more than any of our roofs are rated to. After the coldest, snowiest day that we had last year, I drove up to the church and saw, because they're basically just little toaster ovens sitting there, catching all the solar radiation. Even at night, they're catching the lunar reflection. They're hot. So as the snow hits it, even if it glazes up with ice, by midday, it all slides off. And down that slope, it's a little bit scary sometimes when it comes off, because it's coming off now without any impedance from the gravel, from the shingle roof. It's just coming straight down the glass, shoop, bam, onto the concrete. But it's been impressive. In March, when we had those late snows when the system was fully active, I looked at the app and we were still producing about 20% of the nominative load coming off with the snow load on the panels. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, you actually do a little bit better when you got cold panels versus hot ones in the summertime, because the resistance of the photovoltaic panels goes down, which increases their ability to produce current. So you actually do a little bit better in the wintertime than in the summertime when it comes to the losses of the panel.
Interesting.
Any final questions? Thank you much, Pastor Hank. Great presentation. We do appreciate everybody coming out tonight. If you're not a member of the Northwest Illinois Audubon Society, please consider check us out at the website. And we hope we see you in January, if not before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Nice beard, Steve.
Yeah, I got mine shaved off this morning.
There you go.
Well, thank you all for having me. Truly, it was good to tell the gospel of our solar project and get more folks. I mean, you've been watching it go up for the last year and a half. So.
What's the, talk to me a little bit about, I was going to ask this question, but I didn't get a chance to, but the Creation Justice Church, is that an organization that's non-denominational or what? Tell me about that a little bit.
Creation Justice Ministries was an offshoot of the National Council of Churches. They used to be called the National Council of Church Eco Justice Program. I'm not quite sure why they rebranded. I think a lot of it was because eco justice and climate change and all that, the words just started scaring people. So they said, what can we care about? We care about creation because God has placed us in creation.
Right.
So it's the non-controversial way of saying environmentalism. I want to say 2014, 2015, they did the name change. That logo that I popped up there, every denomination who's part of the NCC, who's committed to seeing the work of the Creation Justice Ministries continue, they've got their own internal denominational, ours says United Church of Christ, Creation Justice, Evangelical Lutheran Church in America, Creation Justice. So it's both an ecumenical mark and a denominational mark. For us to call ourselves a green church, there's also a procedural thing that you got to go through to receive that internal demarcation. If you look at our doors right now under our signs, you see our open and affirming. I can't even remember what they say. Be out, be proud. We're open and affirming. Next to that, Creation Justice will go there. Our Monarch Way Station